The siren wailed like a banshee in the dusty twilight. Cutting through the silence of my new property like a knife through old leather, I stood on the porch of the 150-year-old ranch house, my hands still grimy from unloading boxes, watching. As the sheriff's cruiser pulled up the gravel drive, kicking up a cloud of red dirt that hung in the air like an accusation, behind it, a sleek black SUV followed, and out stepped a man in a crisp polo shirt, clipboard in hand, flanked by two others who looked like they'd stepped straight out of a suburban nightmare. The HOA had arrived, and they weren't here to welcome me with a fruit basket. Little did they know, I wasn't just the new owner, I was about to become their worst nightmare. The unexpected heir to the very empire they thought they controlled. My name is Elias Thorne, and I'd spent the last decade chasing ghosts in the corporate world, trading my soul for stock options in a high-rise jungle. But when my great-uncle Harlan passed away 6 months ago, leaving me this sprawling 200-acre ranch in the heart of Willow Creek Valley, it felt like fate's way of offering redemption. The place was a relic, built in 1875 by Harlan's grandfather, a pioneer who'd wrestled the land from wild mustangs and unforgiving winters, weathered timber beams, a wraparound porch creaking underfoot, and barns that whispered stories of cattle drives long forgotten. I quit my job, packed my life into a U-Haul, and drove cross-country, dreaming of quiet mornings with coffee and the horizon. What I didn't anticipate was the viper's nest waiting in the form of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association, the sheriff. A burly man named Deputy Ramirez with a mustache that could hide secrets climbed out of his car first, adjusting his belt as he approached. "Mr. Thorne?" he called, his voice carrying the weight of authority mixed with small-town weariness. I nodded, stepping down from the porch, my boots crunching on the gravel. The HOA trio hung back, but their leader, a smug-faced guy in his 50s, with a come-over and a name-tag reading, President Harlan Whitaker, pushed forward, his eyes gleaming with predatory intent. "Deputy, this man is trespassing," Whitaker declared, pointing a manicured finger at me like I was a stray dog. "This property is under HOA jurisdiction, and we've got covenants dating back decades that prohibit unauthorized occupancy. We demand he vacate immediately, or we'll pursue eviction through the courts." I felt a surge of heat in my chest, the kind that comes from being blindsided. Trespassing. This is my inheritance. I have the deed right here. I pulled the folded papers from my back pocket, but Whitaker waved them away as if they were yesterday's news. "Those are outdated. The ranch was annexed into the HOA 20 years ago, under eminent domain clauses. Your uncle signed off on it reluctantly, but he did. Now, as per our bylaws, all properties must comply with modern standards. No livestock. Without permits, no unapproved structures, and certainly no lone wolf owners who think they can ignore the community vision." His cronies nodded in unison, one a pinched-faced woman with pearls, the other a younger man scribbling notes furiously. "Deputy." Ramirez scratched his head, looking between us. "Look, folks, if there's a dispute, it needs to go through civil court. But Mr. Whitaker here filed a complaint saying you're squatting, Mr. Thorne. I gotta check your papers." As I handed over the deed, my mind raced. Harlan had mentioned the HOA in his letters, grumbling about their fees and rules encroaching on his freedom. But he'd never said anything about signing away rights. The ranch predated the subdivision by a century. How could a bunch of cookie-cutter homeowners dictate terms to a historic landmark? Ramirez scanned the documents, his brow furrowing. "Seems legit on the surface. But if there's an HOA lien or something ... Whitaker smirked. "There is, and more. We've been eyeing this land for expansion. Community center, perhaps. Your uncle was holding out, but now, game over." That night, after the deputy left with a warning to sort it out peacefully, I sat in the dimly lit kitchen, the old oak table scarred from generations of meals. The house smelled of aged wood and faint lavender from Harlan's late wife's sachets. I pored over the inheritance packet, the will, property surveys, and a sealed envelope I'd overlooked. Inside was a letter from Harlan, dated just before his death. "Elias," it read in his shaky scrawl, "the vultures are circling. The HOA thinks they've got me cornered, but but I've got an ace. The original charter from 1875 names the ranch owner as perpetual president of any governing body over these lands. It's buried in the fine print, but it's ironclad. Use it wisely. Don't let them steal our legacy. My heart pounded. Perpetual president. I dug deeper, pulling out yellow documents from the attic. There it was, the founding charter of Willow Creek, establishing the ranch as the seat of authority for any future associations. When the HOA formed in the 1990s, they unwittingly incorporated under that umbrella, making the ranch owner me the de facto boss. But knowledge was one thing. Wielding it was another. The next morning, Whitaker returned with reinforcements, a lawyer in a suit that screamed billable hours, and a tow truck idling ominously at the gate. "Mr. Thorne, we've obtained a temporary restraining order. You have 24 hours to remove your belongings, or we'll do it for you." I met them at the fence, the sun beating down like a hammer. "Call off the dogs, Whitaker. I've got something you need to see." He laughed, a brittle sound, unless it's a check for back. "Dues, I'm not interested." I thrust the charter into his hands. Section 4, Paragraph 2. The proprietor of Thorne Ranch shall hold presiding authority over all communal governance entities within the valley boundaries. That's me. I'm your new HOA president. The lawyer snatched the paper, his eyes widening. As he scanned it, Whitaker's face drained of color. "This is preposterous, archaic nonsense. We'll contest it." But the seed was planted. Word spread like wildfire through the subdivision. Neighbors whispered over picket fences, some relieved at the prospect of change, others terrified. The HOA had ruled with an iron fist, fining for unmowed lawns, banning holiday lights, even dictating paint colors. Harlan had fought them silently, but now I was in the arena. That afternoon, I called an emergency board meeting at my ranch. Whitaker showed up fuming, his entourage in tow. The woman, Vice President Marlene Croft, clutched her pearls tighter. The note-taker, treasurer, Jake Simmons, looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Sit," I said, gesturing to the porch swing, and rocking chairs. They perched uncomfortably as I laid out the charter projections on a makeshift screen from my laptop. This isn't a takeover. It's reclamation. The HOA was meant to serve the community, not suffocate it. Whitaker slammed his fist on the armrest. "You can't just waltz in, and I already have," I interrupted. "Downed. As president, my first act is to audit the books. Jake, hand them over." Simmons hesitated, but under my glare, he complied. What I found was a cesspool, embezzled funds for Whitaker's community projects. That suspiciously aligned with his backyard remodels, inflated fees funneled to cronies, and threats to elderly residents to sell out. The confrontation escalated. Whitaker called the cops again, claiming harassment. Deputy Ramirez arrived, rolling his eyes. "Again, folks, this is civil, not criminal." But I was ready. "Deputy, arrest him for fraud." I presented the evidence, forged signatures on liens, including one on my ranch. Ramirez cufflinked Whitaker right there on the porch, the click echoing like justice served. Marlene and Jake scattered like rats, but I wasn't done. Over the next weeks, I reformed the HOA from the ground up. Meetings in the barn, open to all. We slashed fees, approved gardens and chickens, preserved historic sites. The ranch became the heart again, hosting barbecues where subdivisions met cowboys. Yet shadows lingered. Whitaker out on bail rallied dissenters. Anonymous threats arrived. Slashed tires, poisoned feed for the horses I'd inherited. One night, a fire started in the old Barnerson. The fire marshal confirmed. I doubled down, installing cameras and rallying neighbors. At the annual HOA election, now truly Democratic, I won in a landslide. Whitaker fled town. His empire crumbled. Today, the ranch stands proud, a beacon of freedom in a world of rules, and me. I'm not just the owner, I am the boss who turned. The tables, the siren wailed like a banshee in the dusty twilight, cutting through the silence of my new property like a knife through old leather. I stood on the porch of the 150-year-old ranch house. my hands still grimy from unloading boxes. Watching as the sheriff's cruiser pulled up the gravel drive, kicking up a cloud of red dirt that hung in the air like an accusation. Behind it, a sleek black SUV followed, and out stepped a man in a crisp polo shirt, clipboard in hand, flanked by two others who looked like they'd stepped straight out of a suburban nightmare. The HOA had arrived, and they weren't here to welcome me with a fruit basket. Little did they know, I wasn't just the new owner, I was about to become their worst nightmare. The unexpected heir to the very empire they thought they controlled. My name is Elias Thorne, and my life had been a series of calculated risks in the cutthroat world of finance. I'd climbed the ladder in New York, dealing in millions, but the stress had left me hollow. A shell of the boy who'd grown up hearing tales of the Wild West from my great uncle Harlan. When the lawyer's call came, informing me of Harlan's passing, and my inheritance of Thorne Ranch, it was like a lifeline thrown into stormy seas. I cashed out my stocks, said goodbye to the skyline, and headed west to Willow Creek Valley, Montana. The ranch was a time capsule, 200 acres of rolling hills, dotted with ancient oaks and a creek that babbled secrets. The house itself was a sturdy Victorian, with gabled roofs, creaking floors, and walls that held the echoes of frontier life. Built in 1875, it had seen blizzards, booms, and busts. I arrived on a crisp autumn day, the leaves turning gold, ready to reclaim my roots. Unloading the truck was therapeutic boxes of books, tools, and a few mementos from my old life. I envisioned restoring the barns, maybe raising some horses, living off the grid in harmony with the land. But as the sun dipped low, the peace shattered with the arrival of that cruiser. Deputy Ramirez approached with measured steps, his badge glinting. "Evening, sir. You Elias Thorne?" "That's me," I replied, wiping sweat from my brow. "We've got a complaint from the Willow Creek HOA. They say this property is in violation of covenants, and you're not authorized to be here." I chuckled incredulously. "Violation? I own it, inherited fair and square." That's when Whitaker strutted up, his face a mask of entitlement. "Ownership is one thing, compliance is another. This land was incorporated into our association in 1998. Your uncle paid dues sporadically, but now we're enforcing. No more eyesore barns, no unregulated fencing. And frankly, we have plans for this parcel golf course expansion." His words hit like a gut punch. "Golf course? On a historic ranch land?" The woman beside him, Marlene Croft, nodded primly. "It's for the greater good, property values and all." Jake Simmons, the treasurer, added, "We've got liens for unpaid fees, totaling $50,000. Pay up or get out." I invited them inside to discuss, but they refused, preferring to loom on the porch. Ramirez mediated, suggesting I provide proof. I fetched the deed from my truck, but Whitaker dismissed it, outdated. Our bylaws supersede. As they left, Whitaker tossed over his shoulder, "Expect a formal eviction notice. And if you resist, we'll involve the authorities again." That night, under the glow of a single bulb, I unpacked Harlan's personal effects. Among them, the sealed envelope. His letter was a revelation. "Boy, the HOA's been after me for years. Thought they could bully an old man? But the charter from '75 makes the ranch owner head of any local governance." 8. I spent hours in the attic, dust motes, dancing in flashlight beams, unearthing the original documents. The Thorne Ranch Charter, signed by territorial governors, indeed stipulated that the proprietor held veto power and leadership over any community body formed thereafter. When the HOA was established to manage the growing subdivisions around the valley, they filed under the county's umbrella, unknowingly binding themselves to this clause. Armed with this, I prepared for battle. The next day, Whitaker returned with the lawyer, Mr. Ellis, a shark in pinstripes. "We've got the tro," Ellis said, waving papers. "Vacate by noon tomorrow," countered with the charter. Read it closely. I'm not leaving him taking charge. Ellis's composure cracked as he pored over it. This, ... this could hold water. "But it'll take litigation to confirm," Whitaker exploded. "Litigation. This bumpkin thinks he can oust me." I don't think I know, I said calmly. Call a board meeting tonight. Reluctantly, they agreed, gathering in my living room amid antique furniture. I presented evidence. The charter, historical precedents from county records I'd emailed myself. Murmurs rippled through them, but Whitaker wasn't done. Even if true, you're not qualified. We have standards. Standards like embezzlement. I shot back, revealing discrepancies I'd spotted in public HOA filings online before arriving. Dues misused for personal gains. The room tensed. Marlene defended. Those were investments. Jake squirmed. I can explain. The meeting dissolved. Into chaos, Whitaker storming out with threats of lawsuits. But the die was cast. I filed with the county clerk the next morning, claiming my position. Notifications went out to all 500 HOA members. Emergency election in 2 weeks. The backlash was swift. Vandalism hit the ranch fences cut, graffiti on the barn, outsider go home. Whitaker's smear campaign painted me as a city slicker destroyer, but allies emerged. Old-timers who'd known Harlan. Young families tired of tyranny. One evening, Mrs. Lena Hargrove, a widow from the subdivision, knocked on my door with a pie. Your uncle was a good man. The HOA fined me for my rosebush said. They were non-native. Ridiculous. You've got my vote. Her story was one of many. I hosted town halls in the pasture, bonfires crackling as people shared grievances. The ranch became a symbol of resistance. Whitaker escalated, calling the cops thrice more. False reports of trespassers me. Noise complaints, wind chimes, even animal cruelty, the horses were fine. Ramirez grew exasperated. Mr. Whitaker, this is harassment. One more, and I'll cite you. The arson attempt came on a moonless night. I awoke to smoke, flames licking the old barn. I grabbed the extinguisher, fighting back the blaze until firefighters arrived. Evidence pointed to Whitaker gas cans traced to his garage. Confronted at the election assembly in the community hall, he denied it, but the crowd turned. Votes tallied. Me, 378. Whitaker, 122. As new president, I dissolved corrupt committees, refunded overcharges, and integrated ranch preservation into bylaws. The golf course dream died. Instead, we planned hiking trails linking subdivisions to the creek. Whitaker faced charges, fleeing to relatives out of state. Peace settled over Willow Creek. The ranch thrived, horses grazing under vast skies. I'd come seeking solace. I found purpose. Years later, as I sip coffee on the porch, watching the sunrise paint the valley gold, I reflect on that first siren. It wasn't an end. It was the beginning of reclaiming what was rightfully mine.